Think about it. Think about it. Think about it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to week number 4 of High School Basketball Weekly. I'm Rick Bua, joined by my co-host John Franzoni this week. And John, the Christmas holiday is come and gone. We're into a new year, so Happy New Year to our viewers. And we got some action. Not as much action this week that we normally have, but we're going to do our very best to keep you informed on the games that were played in Berkshire County, especially with the 4 schools, McCann, Drury, Hoosick Valley, and Mount Greylock, that we cover each week. So, John, let's get started. And sometimes we flip a coin, but this week we're just going to start with the girls. And it was very, very limited action, everybody. And I got to start off with McCann Tech. The Lady Horns have only played 3 games thus far. They're still winless after a loss at Lee, John. But at some point, once they get playing a little bit more, improvements I'm sure will be made down there with Coach Krantz's team.
Sure, it's a young team. I think there's only 1 senior on the team. They're getting some valuable experience with some young players playing some real big minutes for the McCann girls already. And they got a veteran coach, Coach Kratz, coming back, is going to have that team preparing, getting better. He's had, the good thing about when you don't play a lot of games early in the season, you get a lot of practice time. So you get time to work on the things that you want to be effective at when you get a chance to play. And with a young team, that's important, but it's also important to get that game action. So they're going to get that coming up the next few weeks with a more active schedule game-wise, and we'll see what progress they've made during that time.
Yeah, they've got Granby coming up, and then at Pioneer Valley. And then on Monday, January 8th, it's going to be our game of the week. What we're doing this year, ladies and gentlemen, as Tim Morey and I have told you in the past, is we're trying to focus in and feature the 3 schools that we cover mostly, McCann, Drury, and Hoosick Valley, with the game of the week. And so it's time for us to go down to the Hornets' Nest, and the Lady Eagles of Mount Everett will be coming to McCann, take on Coach Krantz's team on Monday, January 8th at 7 o'clock, and Northern Berkshire Community Television will be there to broadcast that ball game, and we will be reporting on it next week. But in the meantime, as John, you just said, practice, and that's what McCann Tech's been doing. In that loss to Lee, Aiden Champney has scored the double figures. She scored 10 points, and Hannah Boys for 8. And that's where this scoring is going to come. And Hannah Boys, we've talked about her a lot over the last 3 years. We used to call her part of the Twin Towers with Macy Tatro. And they did dominate down low for a couple of years. And I think they're going to have to get some more scoring out of Hannah Boysford. And she's a lefty. She likes to work underneath. She does play the post pretty well. And, hopefully Coach Krantz will figure something out. We had seen them only so far in the Jamboree. I thought he needed a ball handler. Hopefully he's working on getting a point guard that can handle that ball. Someone that he feels confident with the ball safe in their hands. And looking forward to covering the McCann girls next week as they host the Lady Eagles of Mount Everett. The Mount Greylock Mounties won a couple of games pretty quickly this year. Coach Jacoby got a couple wins under his belt, and then had some injuries and some illness. And so they're 2-6 right now, 1-3 in the league. Most recently played a very competitive game, John, against Taconic, only losing 51-44.
Yeah, I mean, it's a young team over at Greylock, and Coach Jacoby is one of the top coaches in the league. And, a team that probably could have used that more limited schedule like the McCann girls played didn't get that break. I mean,
right.
We saw them play against Drury. They were missing 4 or 5 of their top players that night. And they played 8 games already, going 2-6 in the early part of their season. But they started off 2-1 when they were at full strength and had some nice wins on the road at the Franklin County tournament and also down at Monument. So it'll be interesting to see as Greylock gets back to full strength again in January, how they pick back up again. They play Monument again coming up next couple of weeks, and they've got some good matchups. But another tough game against Wacona, I think it's tonight. So that's a tough schedule that Coach Jacoby's team's playing, but it's going to make those young players even better coming down the stretch.
Yeah, Wacona and then Agawam, so it doesn't get any easier. And they just played Pittsfield, and you kind of feel, a little bit out of your league because, Pittsfield is it's a much bigger school, and they do have a very talented basketball program down there with Coach Rassicott. So no shame at all in losing to PHS. But they got top scorers from Mia Filio and Maddie Powell, each with 14 points in that loss against Taconic. So they can play with the larger schools. I mean, Taconic a little bit down this year as compared to the past themselves. But I definitely like Coach Jacoby's youth. I liked him in the jamboree that we saw. And he's got a lot of 8th graders and 9th graders coming up. And we didn't get a chance to see them play when we did the Mount Greylock game, you and I. But he's going to be fine. And I say the same thing about Coach Jacoby. I have the utmost respect for him. And those kids are only going to get better as the season goes on. The next team, the Drury Blue Devils. John, we're going to spend a few minutes here on the Blue Devils. They played a very, very tight ball game against Wacona and led pretty much all the way right to the wire. Wacona caught him at the end, and then a Madison McCarthy 3 with 2.3 left on the clock. Oh my goodness! Put the dagger in for the coach Downey's kids that night. And I said to you off air before we went on the show, Coach Downey has had more of those than being on the flip side.
Sure. I mean, it's a process to teach your young kids how to win basketball games. So far, Drury's 2-2 this year. Both games they've lost at Agawam and at home against Wacona. They've led in the fourth quarter and looked like they had opportunities to win those games. You play a team like Wacona, especially a team that's been through a lot of these type of tough, physical, close battles. They've had kids that have stepped in and made baskets and learned how to win those basketball games. You know, Drury was battling some foul trouble that night with Jacinta Felix not playing her usual minutes due to fouls, but we said that a little bit during the broadcast with Mount Greylock. Those are the times when you want to see who steps up and is being developed as a backup point guard, who can step in and play, because when you play the type of game that Jacinta does play on both ends of the court, being a solid defensive and offensive player, you're going to get some fouls. So you need players to step in, and obviously in the Wacona game they did with Delaney Hayden stepping up with some good minutes. Ava Mosier played some good minutes, scoring 13 points. So this is going to be the key. Drury they played 4 games in the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. And I was looking at their schedule, they're going to play 8 games in the next 19 days. So this will be a real test of their depth, of how far those young players have come. Fortunately, good news is 5 of those games are at home. So it's definitely something that you have to work on as a team. You work on those late game situations, you work on different things. You could tell, I watched that clip a few times on iBerkshire of that game-winning shot, and I think Coach Downey mentioned in the article, they got a little confused in their communication and didn't react to the shooter. I mean, McCarthy had 20 points in the game and she got open for a shot. They ran at her after she had the ball, but those are one of those times where communication's key, so she doesn't catch the ball. Make their second, third, fourth option be the player that scores, and that's one of those things that a young team has to learn.
In that ball game, you mentioned Eva Mosier and Delaney Hayden, and you talk about a sophomore and a 9th grader, and Coach Downey's got everything in his favor in his program right now. And we talked about you can't look at someone's roster at the end of a season and figure that every one of those young athletes is going to be back the next year for whatever reasons. There may be transfers. You don't know, there's still some injuries on his team and a couple kids that were on the roster that are no longer on the roster. But you got to go with the kids that are there, and he's doing a great job working with those kids. They got Lennox coming up in Lennox, and then Pope Francis. So not easy at all. Pope Francis will be a league game, but I still think Drury will be when it's all said and done, John, will be at the top of that division when it's all done. And then moving on to Hoosick Valley, the Hurricanes were off for 11 days. And again, they're one of the teams that did not reap the benefit of getting some action. So it was a lot of practice. But they did easily handle Lee just the other night, 68-28. They had 4 players at double figures, and that's what they're all about. That's what Coach Frederick's kids do. They did it last year. They're doing it again this year. You just never know. You have to look at the box score to see who's leading them in scoring. Now, you don't get to see everything else, but you do get to see the scoring at least. And Ashlyn LaSure led the way with 12 points. Hannah Shea, Abby Scalaba, and Emma Meswar, who is, again, playing great basketball. All those kids that we just saw just a couple weeks ago, John, and had in the post-game interview, still playing very well. They all had 11 apiece. The Hurricanes led 36-13 and a half, and they just cruised to victory. And they've got Munson, and they've got Amherst coming up. And Amherst, I think, is it the same Amherst team that Huzik is used to the last couple of years. I think they're in a little rebuild, if anything. They're not quite as strong as they were. That doesn't mean it's not going to be a difficult task when they go on the road. But for her efforts, our player of the week this week is junior point guard Ashlyn Schur from the Hoosick Valley Hurricanes. And she's just a little spark plug, John. I just love the way this young lady plays.
Yeah, she's a tremendous player. Handles the basketball very well on offense, keys their pressure defense, and can attack the basket, shoot the three. She's just a very well-rounded player. And playing with all those seniors that they have on the team, she kind of makes that whole engine go over at Hoosick. And it's been interesting to watch and read about their wins so far with a variety of players scoring in double figures: Lashir, Garabedian, McNeese, Shea, Meswar. They've had a whole, and Schlaba. So they've had 6, I think, players so far this year scoring double digits. And that makes them an even more dangerous team. They're always going to be tough on defense with the type of program that Coach Frederick has over at Hoosick Valley. But now they're showing a ability, 68 points against Lee. Obviously, they're a little overmatched there. But the key thing is they've been scoring points every game. And when you defend the way Hoosick does, and now you have 5, 6 players that can put the ball in the hoop, they're going to be a tough out as they go through their schedule this season.
And it kind of takes the pressure a little bit off Taylor Garabedian to score, you know. And here you are. Take a look at the for a second there. We have the girls Central. Right now, Agawam in the conference is 4-0. They're off to a really good start. Pope Francis, as I said, is very good. There's Drury 2-1 right behind them with wins over Monument and Greylock, 2-2 overall. So Drury will hold their own, and Coach Downey's had his kids middle to the top the first 2 years. On the left-hand side, ladies and gentlemen, the girls Suburban, Hoosick Valley at 3-0. Now, these are graphics we usually show you later in the season during the Western Mass Tournament or the MIAA action, but we thought we'd just bring it out a little earlier this year. And Wacona's 3-1 overall after that big win at Drury. And Coach Liz Kay's pretty excited, I believe, John, because there was an article in Mass Live, recently, that Olivia Gambaroni, their all-star point guard, is on her way back from injury. And when she gets back there, havoc to pay, they're going to be pretty good.
Right. I mean, she's a dominant player at the point guard defensively, and she's a physically strong player. So for Wacona to go off to a 3-1 start when really their 2 best players that were supposed to return this year, neither one has played. Gambaroni's been injured, and Grace Wigington transferred to a prep school, I believe. So, you know, for Wacona to come out just shows the depth of their team to win 3 out of 4 games. Played a tough game at Hoosick for their 1 loss, so they're going to get them back at home, and it'll be interesting to see if Gambaroni is back for that game to help them handle the Hoosick pressure.
Yeah, and I always thought, John, that when you look at the box score, when you see kids averaging 7, 8, 9 points, they don't have to be in double figures, but they're all contributing, and it takes a little bit of pressure off your bigs. So Taylor Garabedian may not end up this season with the points per game average that she did last year, but she's getting so much more help from kids that were more role players last year that have stepped up. So I think that's a great thing, and only good things to come for Coach Frederick and his Lady Hurricanes.
Yeah, you can see it with that depth. I mean, their players have gotten better in the offseason, so having more players to carry the load there just makes them a better team.
So we're going to switch over to the boys if we can, and we're going to start off, as we did with the girls, with Coach Chris Bullitt's McCann Tech Hornets, and they are 3-1, 1-1 overall, and they were idle the whole week. So unfortunately, we don't have a game to report, but I'm sure Coach has had his kids practicing hard. I don't know if there's such a thing as a scrimmage, you know, during the holiday week, but I'm sure he tried to get some kind of action for his kids to keep them fresh. And they will be entertaining Duggan Academy on Friday, this coming Friday, January 5th. And then on Saturday, they're going to be taking on the Mount Greylock Mounties at McCann. And those should be 2 pretty good ball games. Very interested on reporting, John, next week, that matchup between Greylock and McCann. That should be a great ball game.
Oh, yeah, it should be a great crowd in the Hive on Saturday night to play against Mount Greylock. Both teams have had some good wins this year. You know, Greylock's bounced back from a couple of tough losses to be 3-3 now. McCann boys are 3-1, and they have 3 scorers, 3 players in double figures. Mazza with 15, Walter Mazza with 15, Eric Rujo with 10.75, and then Jacob Holland right below that with about 9 points a game. So McCann's showing some good balance with their scoring, and that should be a really fun game on Saturday night.
Yeah, and John, you mentioned the Mount Greylock Mounties. They're 3-3 right now, but they're still 3-0 in the league, and I really like the league they play in. And before we even report on what the Mounties did last week, in the first season of the new format, league format, they went 10-0 and won their division. Last year, they went 10-0 and won their division. This year, they're 3-0, tied for first place. So they've never had a loss in the league. Yes, there are a couple other stronger D5 leagues possibly, but they're in the right league, that's for sure. And it does a lot for your self-confidence too.
Sure, we talked about that earlier. I think they've done very well in their league over the last couple of years. I think a factor in that is they play a tough non-league schedule.
Yeah, do.
So when you're going out playing these tough teams in the non-league, then when you get into the playing against teams that are in your league on that same level, we'll say, in the same division, then you're more prepared to play against those teams that are a better matchup with you because you've taken on the tough competition, got your players better, made your team better, and now you're ready to face that league competition and be successful. And Greylock has really shown a blueprint for how to do that.
Yeah, in the Hampshire North, as I said, they're still undefeated. They defeated League Foe Lee 60-36. Desmond Cobb, who has become pretty much their higher scorer so far, had 23. Noah Kane Smalls added 15, and that's a great 1-2 combination they have over Greylock right now. Greylock led 33-16 at the half, and as I said, 23 games in a row in that league since its inception 2 years ago. They did, however, play a very, very tough team, John, Pioneer Valley, and were totally outmatched in that one, 72-25. Greylock got off to a horrible start and trailed 41-13 at the half. Brady Auger led the Mounties with 9 points. There was no one in double figures that night. But they did play without Desmond Cobb. Would that have brought a victory? Well, maybe not that night, but when you're not playing with your best player, that's a big change.
Yeah, especially when you're playing with a team of that caliber and not be at full strength. We talked about that with the Greylock girls earlier, matching up with Drury and some other tough teams. Depth is a key, and many teams don't have the depth that they need at this point because the numbers are going down. Right? We talked about this before. So how do you compete in those games? And it's a chance for young kids to play. And Pioneer is obviously one of the upper echelon teams. They'll be at, I think, Drury tomorrow night. So that's going to be a great matchup for the Blue Devils to see how they can compete with that team that's 7-0 right now early in the season.
Yeah, and tonight Mount Greylock is actually home against Hampshire North opponent Smith Academy, so hopefully they'll put that fourth win into the win column, and that's another game that we're going to report on next week's edition of High School Basketball Weekly. Moving on to the Hoosick Valley Hurricanes. They were idle during the week. They've had 13 days off and actually played Monument Mountain last night because this show is being aired on Thursday, so we will have that game to report also next week. That was the featured game of the week that Tim, you and John talked about. So we'll talk about that next week. But they've also got East Hampton coming up. So, down the road, Hoosick's got a couple tough matchups. And I think towards the end of the month, they've got Pioneer Valley. And Pioneer Valley is sitting at 7-0 right now. So that'll be a good test for Coach Robinson. We'll see what happens. But it's going to be a great season for the Hurricanes one way or another.
And at Pioneer games in the Hoop Hall Classic down in Springfield, where there's so many good games on the holiday weekend, and that's a good job by the schedulers down there. I know they get all these national teams that come in and play, and that's terrific. But to have some high-quality Western Mass teams playing against each other like Pioneer and Hoosick Valley boys, I think that's the first game to kick off the weekend. So great start to, I think, 4 or 5 days of tremendous basketball in Springfield.
Yeah, Coach Robinson's team has been honored to be chosen to play at the Hoop Hall for a few years now, and deservingly so. So, and my hat's off also to the committee that picked some of the local schools, and they picked a great Pioneer Valley team and a great Berkshire County team, and it should be a real good one as the Hurricanes play later in the month at the Hoop Hall Classic. And let's move on to the Drury Blue Devils, who are now sitting at 4-2 and 1-2 in the league. At home, they took on rival Hampshire South League rival Lennox. And John, that's a game that you and Tim Morey broadcasted last week. Drury won that game 70-52. And the key thing here, John, I did a little investigation work. I know Coach Scott Sibley has been coming up to Drury a lot lately. Yes, they do have the home and home for the league, and Drury's gone 1-1 over the last 2 years down in Lenox. But they've won the last 6 games at the Bucky Bullet Gym. So it's a place that he's trying to kind of break the curse a little bit. But Sammy Mormon had a big night underneath and controlled the boards and pretty much had his way with Lenox.
Yeah, it was a real coming out party for Sam Mormon. He's had a great start to the season in their first 6 games, but that was his best game of the early part of the schedule. You know, scoring 25 points, he was balanced, scoring double digits in both the first and second half. We talked before the game about how his matchup with Shaler Larman was such a huge factor in the game, and he dominated that. Larman got in foul trouble early and just couldn't seem to keep himself on the court. But the big part of that was because he was trying to cover Sam, who was active on both ends and really dominated the game, helping Drury to pull away in the second half. Miles Beauchamp played a great first half with 16 points and was just unguardable in that first half. He was either hitting a three, driving to the basket, and then also he was dishing to his teammates as well. And in the second half, when the Drury got really stagnant in the third quarter, there was some big plays at the end of that third quarter by Jorge Bond to get the lead back from Lenox had gotten it down to 9 points, but he hit a three off a great pass by James Varelis, and then had an offensive rebound for a basket to get Drury's lead back up to 14, and then they never looked back in the fourth quarter. So that was a real nice win for Drury because in that third quarter, they just, after playing 41 points, everything's clicking in the first half. In the third quarter, everything went the other way. They were throwing the ball around the gym, turning it over, and then they had some big plays at the end of the quarter as Lenox was getting themselves back in the game. Drury really made some big plays, and it was a couple of the younger players, and Varelis and Bond, that got them back on track again, and then Mormon took over again in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and what Coach Reset has, John, is a squad that he knows he's got one big down below. He's got junior Colin Daly that can help out down below, and there were a couple of times where they were playing double post, and so it's something probably Coach Reset and Coach Georgie are working on up at Drury. But he's got some pure shooters, and so you know as a coach that you're going to yell to your players periodically, watch the shooter. Well, at times you've got Beauchamp and Varelis and Bond occasionally in the game at the same time, right. Not for a long period of time, but those kids can knock down the open three. They are deadly, and that's going to be an asset for Coach Reset's team this year. And as you said, also Beauchamp's not afraid to drive. Dillard's not afraid to drive. And what I like about that Drury win, John, was that their leading scorer didn't have to lead the way. And he did score 8 or 9 points, but he didn't have to lead the way. So Drury right now has four kids actually averaging double figures. It's been a long time since that happened because you've had some superstars up there. You had Louis Gelati for a couple years. Before that was Scott McGuire, Reese Reset, and Hayden Bird. So I like Drury's team. I like the youth. I like where they've come so far. And I know Coach Reset and Coach Georgie, Coach Holmgren, and Coach Beauchamp are going to take them a long way this year. They've got our player of the week this week for his 25 points and 12 rebounds is junior center Sam Mormon. And, I knew he was going to develop. And physically, he really changed. His stature changed last year. But they brought him up slowly and calmly and didn't make him the man last year when Gelati was the guy. He was getting some help from Amon David. But he's got to step up now as a junior. There's only better things to come for Sammy Mormon as this year goes on. He's playing with a lot of confidence. He's very strong. And he's one of the hoops in that game, John, was a little turnaround, a little one-handed left hook right off the glass. And once a young man starts working both left and right, it's only good things to come.
Yeah, Sam showed a great variety of moves in that game. He talked about that little left-hand hook. He scored off offensive rebounds. He scored on tough catches in the paint. He just did everything you could possibly do. He scored in transition. So when you can be that versatile in the way you score the basketball, it makes you that much more difficult to guard. And like you said, Drury has a tremendous perimeter. One of the things that really showed in that game against Lenox was, you're right, Dillard didn't have his best game. I think early in the game they were shading towards him a little bit on the Lenox matchup zone. So what did he do? His teammates got involved. Beauchamp started hitting some shots. Bond hit some shots. Mormon got involved. And that just shows that with Drury's versatility on offense, they're going to be a hard team to guard against these better teams, and especially with some of these games coming up against Pioneer. Got Greenfield again coming up on the road. There's some good battles for those young players. And again, that's where you got to show your maturity. So they had that tough stretch in the third quarter against Lennox. I'm sure coach is working on how they're going to get through those patches and not let a team back in the game when you have a chance to put them away.
And they're doing this with one senior, that's Dante. But taking a look one more time on the Hampshire South, Pioneer Valley, they're a very, very good team. Scott Thayer's got a great program over there. He sustained a great program year in and year out, always towards the top. Drury lost to Mahar in a game that they led in the fourth quarter, so they know it could be a totally different story here. Greenfield, you never know. They battled with them in the first game, even though they came up on the short end just by a few points. But they did take Greenfield down to win that Western Mass Class D last year. So I like Drury. They're going to be at the top end there. And again, on the right-hand side, Greylock at 3-0, playing in the Hampshire North, and that's exactly where they should be. Monument Mountain at 4-0, Hoosick Valley at 3-0 in the Bi-County East. Those two teams will be battling for that top spot all year long. And then over in the Tri-County North, the one league loss is from Mechanic is Mount Everett. But our game of the week, a week from now, not next week, but the week after, week of the 15th, is going to be the Mount Everett boys at Mechanic. So we've got a lot of action left to go. We're still very early in the season. We got a couple of minutes left, ladies and gentlemen. So John, why don't we talk a little bit about, we talked a little bit about the Wahconah girls. Let's talk about the Wahconah boys. Coach Dustin Belcher's team lost their opener at Drury this year and is now 4-3. And they beat East Longmeadow 61-46. And again, Pat McLaughlin is going to be their guy.
Right.
He played just a little bit under the shadow of Brady Colvert, as Brady was an incredible point guard, 1,000-point scorer, and they had a great 1-2 punch. And I know that 1-2 punch is gone now due to graduation. But if you take a look at McLaughlin, they won their third straight game topping Greenfield, a very, very good basketball team, 62-47. McLaughlin had 27 in that game. So he's averaging nearly 29 points a game, John, at the high school level. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, he's not anybody's. He's casting the wide shadow now, I would say, on that team. Every game that you read about with Wahconah boys, he's scoring up, high 20s into the 30s every single time, and that's impressive knowing that he comes into a game and he's the focal point for the other team's defense to stop him, and he's still getting 30 points a game. So, and Wahconah's playing against a tough schedule, playing all those teams down in the Springfield area and still coming away with some tough wins. The score against Greenfield really impressed me after Greenfield beat Drury. So it was a nice show from the maturity I think that is coming with that Wahconah team after losing to Drury early in the season. They've really come on the last few weeks.
And
Beauchamp with a beautiful
and you
drop
see a little
down.
putback there right away by Connor Hinkle.
And Bond thought about it for a minute.
There's Miles Beauchamp taking back a three and draining one. Good ball movement here by the Blue Devils as Bond next one down. Jorge, great shooter, as we said earlier. Here's Beauchamp going to the hoop. He's going to take it all the way, lay it in.
Here's a good example of Drury spacing. They did a great job in that game of not being bunched up and really making themselves difficult to guard. There's a lefty.
That's that lefty hook we were just talking about by Sam Mormon. And James Savarellis just beating the buzzer, John. That must have been brought the crowd to their feet a little bit. Nice feed down to Mormon, and Sam uses that strength and uses that board very effectively.
Yeah, it was an exciting game. Drury really played well offensively. You can see the great ball movement there. Nice look by Mormon in the post.
Finding Mormon all the way down, and they got a steal coming up. And Beauchamp gets the ball up to Dante Dillard. He puts it in off the glass. So,
Very unselfish too, Drury. They do a good job moving the basketball.
and if you enjoyed those clips, ladies and gentlemen, that game is in its entirety will be shown directly after the show at 8 o'clock on channel 1302. Stay right with us at NBC TC to watch the Lennox Drury ball game, and you're going to really enjoy it. Our High School Basketball Weekly is shown, ladies and gentlemen, every week at 7:30 on Thursdays and replayed at 10 a.m. every Saturday morning and 7:30 p.m. every Sunday night. So for John Franzoni, I'm Rick Boer. Our thanks to Dave Fabiano and Peter Gentile for a great job. Without them, we couldn't bring you this broadcast. Good night. See you next week.